Before we start, just a word on logistics. Everyone sees where the breakfast and coffee is, so that's critically important. But there are a bunch of seats back here. We're going to run out. So before we officially start, for those on the periphery, if you want to make your way over to the side, there are a lot of seats. So this is incredible. I'm Neil Kleinman. I'm a professor of policy here at New York University, and we are so glad to have you here for this incredible conversation. 1 year to discuss this document and how far the city has come. And I know more than a year, about 15 years ago, when I worked at the Center for an Urban Future with Jonathan Bowles, our core focus was economic development and jobs. And we quickly realized that it was impossible to look at this area without also looking at workforce development, and not just looking at it, but dedicating ourselves to it, which is something the Center for an Urban Future has done for quite a while. I've continued to do with my career. And it's so encouraging to see the de Blasio administration also committing to workforce and employment, which is a very complicated area, not just at the intersection of economic development, but human services and so much else in the city. So I'm so glad that we have the time to have this conversation. And to get us going, I am going to turn it over to the Center for an Urban Future's board chair, Gifford Miller.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for your work in NYU and everything you do to help bring groups like this together to help make a difference for the city. It is my great pleasure to chair the Center for an Urban Future. It's an amazing organization, and on the board, we feel very privileged to have the chance to work with the staff and work with everyone else who's worked with us. And I know Blake Foote, who's also on the board, who's done a great deal in this area of workforce development, is here this morning as well. So Blake, thank you for your work on the board. Workforce development is really at the heart of what the Center for an Urban Future does. And really, it's a part of what I think makes our approach unique is that we don't just focus, and we have always, as Neil said, been aware that you can't just focus on creating jobs if you're not also concerned about how to connect New Yorkers to those jobs. And that is something that we have been talking about for a very, very long time. And it's very exciting, I think, for us to see the de Blasio administration embracing so much of that. And in a few moments, I'm going to introduce our fantastic deputy mayor who has led the charge in a new direction for the city on workforce development. But I do want to acknowledge a few people before we do that. At the Center for an Urban Future, we're very blessed to have amazing partners who help make events like this and the research that we do possible. And Deborah Thompson-Velasquez and the Altman Foundation helped make this event possible. So Deborah, thank you. Yes, indeed. And it's exciting to be working closely with the de Blasio administration. A number of Deputy Mayor Glenn's colleagues are here. Greg Bishop, the new Commissioner of Small Business Services. Greg, thank you for being here. And Jackie Mallon, also from Small Business Services. We have Katy Gaul-Stigge, who's going to be here and also part of our panel from the Office of Workforce Development. And Kristen Titus. Yes, applause. And Kristen Titus, also the director of New York City's Tech Talent Pipeline. I'm not going to take any more of your time because I'm not super interesting on this subject. The next person we're going to hear from is, and that is our amazing deputy mayor, who has brought a focus to this area on economic development that is really fresh and exciting. And her initiative, and the Blasio administration's initiative, Career Pathways, is really making an enormous difference in the lives of tens of thousands of New Yorkers. And so it's very, very exciting to have the opportunity to say, please come on up, Deputy Mayor Glenn. Thank you for your work.
I was told to grab the microphone and hold it, so I will do that, following instructions. Thank you, Gifford. As always, you are too kind. Let's take one more second to shout out and appreciate our new fabulous Commissioner of Small Business Services, Greg Bishop, who I hope you'll all get to know better. You probably all know him anyway, but it's really great, as we were saying at the agency last week, sometimes what you're looking for is right in front of your eyes, and it has been really wonderful to work with Greg over the past 2 years, and I'm really excited about Jackie and the team continuing to do this incredible work. So the team is strong, the team's here, we're ready to to do some great work. And again, it's really exciting to be here to be always involved with anything that the Center for an Urban Future is doing. They are obviously at the forefront of so much of the work around urban policy and thinking. And as I always say, I actually read your stuff. I mean, I have like lots of stuff on my nightstand, you know, you get lots of stuff, but I really read it, and it's extraordinary work product. And everybody in this room are really incredible thinkers and doers and leaders on workforce development and community development issues, and sort of get the connection between the things that we're trying to do. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'll try to be brief this morning. Because again, for me, it's an incredible privilege to even have this job, to have this role of trying to continue to work to improve the city while also maintaining our sort of global domination, if you will. I am a born and bred New Yorker. Our global domination as the cultural and commercial and innovation capital of the world. And it just is very exciting to be in New York now. When you walk around New York, you really sense the excitement. Just a few things about what's going on in the city and the broad economy I think are interesting to set the framework here. Is, you know, you have just an extraordinary resurgence of the economy in general right now. Again, you can just feel it in your gut as you walk around. We have, you know, Cadillac is relocating their headquarters in New York City. We have the first New York City-based technology company, AppNexus, hitting an over $1 billion valuation mark. We have, finally, the new Fulton Street subway station and center opening. We have, obviously, an extraordinary resurgence down at the World Trade Center, and we have really interesting partnerships between new economy and old economy happening every single day. Really excited about a new initiative that's going on between AOL and Cornell Tech, really around getting women into these fields. So again, it's just an interesting time to be in New York, the convergence of the old and new. And so for us, you know, when we look at the traditional measures or metrics of how the city is doing, it really is, in many ways, way more vibrant than it has been. So we have now the highest population we've ever had. We have over 8.4 million people, and we're adding people, 5,000 people a month. So it's happening and growing very quickly. Sorry. We have a record 4.25 million jobs. That's our highest job mark ever in the city. And we have over 180,000 private sector jobs that have been added since we took office. And that's the highest growth rate in over 2 decades. Again, something nobody would have thought, you know, when the de Blasio administration came in, oh my God, the sky's falling in, the economy's gonna collapse. But in fact, what's happened is we're seeing extraordinary growth, the highest growth rate really in over 2 decades. Our unemployment rate is now 4.8%. Unbelievable number. Not that any number is an okay number, but it is the first time since 2011 that the city's unemployment rate is lower than the nation's, which of course is really the interesting benchmark that we care about. And again, from us, you know, again, since all of you in this room care about this more than anybody, it's not just the unemployment rate that we want to see down, it's that we want to see wages going up, right? If people have crappy, shitty jobs that are making low wages, it doesn't really matter what your unemployment rate is. So we've actually seen for the first time 4% increase in wages in 2014, which again, not good enough, but at least we're seeing some trending in the right direction. Sorry. All of this also put in the context of our gross domestic product, just to think about GDP, sort of macro, thank you. I was in China last week, and I'm so jet-lagged. I don't even know what day it is. Talk about growth. But this is really important also. I mean, again, just to put into context as to what's going on here. Our GDP now is about $680 billion. That's an average increase of 25% over the past decade and makes us the 12th largest economy in the world. Again, just to give you some framework, and also having been in China recently, putting ourselves in sort of the global context of what is possible here, I think, is important to keep in mind. And again, so the GDP is at its highest, VC investment is at its highest, and we have continued to be the place where more Fortune 500 companies choose to remain and grow, as well as, again, these new economy companies making big bets in New York City. So Samsung, Google, Facebook, Amazon, the new economy, even if they're not headquartered here, are making big bets here. Obviously, you feel it on the streets, more tourists than ever. It's unbelievable what's going on out there. Arts and culture are thriving. The high line is done and fabulous. The low line is on the boards. It is an extraordinary time to be in New York City. But it's not so extraordinary and fabulous for everybody. And there are serious challenges that we face to sustain growth. And I think that's why all of us do what we do and are here today. Still, over 20%, a little bit more than 20% of New Yorkers live below the federal poverty line. The federal poverty line, as you all know, is about $23,000 for a family of 4. that's just not okay, right? 1 in 5 New Yorkers is living at or below the poverty line. More than half of New Yorkers are rent burdened, one of my favorite walking around statistics, which hopefully by the time we're done, we'll say is not that bad, but that's also not acceptable. The average rental price in Manhattan, not that many people probably still live in Manhattan anymore, I'm probably the last holdout, but the average rental price in Manhattan now is $4,000 a month, and that's compared to a national average of $1,000 a month. And in spite of those numbers, the extraordinary expense of living in New York City, we have about a 3% vacancy rate, which for all intents and purposes is functional zero. Our population has increased by 5% over the past 5 years, but our housing stock has only increased by about 2%, just compounding the problem both on affordability and availability. And we do continue to rely on a few very high impact industries when we look at our economy overall. So finance and insurance continues to be about 30 to 31% of our revenues, but only 9% of our workforce. So again, we need to continue to diversify our economy. And the obvious, we are really lagging behind other global cities in terms of our infrastructure investment. Not just that I was in China last week and rode the most amazing subway in the history of the world. It is pretty obvious to everybody that we are not even in a state of good repair, much less in making strategic infrastructure investments that will help us grow the economy in the future. And the other obvious thing for many of you is that it continues to be incredibly hard to start and grow a business in New York City. And we are very expensive, and we are competing for talent in a way that we never did before, right? How many people know their kids' friends are now going to move to Portland or Austin to start a business, right? That's never been in the vernacular. But there are other serious competitors for entrepreneurship and exciting things in other cities in America. So I think just to put it into context, everything is good, but there are real serious challenges, and we need to do something about it. And I think it's because we really need to do it, not just because it's right for the economy, but if we really care at the end of the day about a thriving private and nonprofit sector, if we really, really care about a sustainable future for New York, we need to address these challenges head on. And again, it's not just us saying it, it's everybody saying it, right? Whether it's Janet Yellen, whether it's Lloyd Blankfein, whether it's Steve Rattner. I mean, this is in the vernacular now. How are we going to really address income inequality and think about sustainable growth? So I think the good news, though, on that front is that we do live in this extraordinarily interesting time when I talk about the new economy and innovation, because I think that innovation and technology are radically, radically transforming New York's landscape in a way that we haven't seen in decades. And I think that that innovation and technology will ultimately become the single biggest tool we have in order to build a more dynamic and sustainable, and for us, a more equitable economy. Sorry. So we're not here to talk about One NYC today, but I did want to just put it into context about our broader planning efforts. So our planning blueprint has said that we would like to see 4.9 million jobs by 2040. So basically another 500,000 jobs added to what the current baseline is. And so to achieve that level of job growth, we're thinking about it in 3 ways that are all interconnected. One is to invest in high growth sectors. Those are obviously the tech and creative industries, life sciences, the resurgence of advanced manufacturing, and again, to continue to diversify the economy. The second thing we're doing is to really invest in strong neighborhoods, right? Because at the end of the day, what is the best selling point we have for New York other than New York, right? At the end of the day, people want to live in New York. And so our goal of adding 25,000 housing units a year, addressing the affordable housing crisis, coupled with very strategic and specific investments in schools and open space and healthcare, all of these quality of life essentials, we need to invest in our neighborhoods in order to support job growth. The third thing we have to do is we have to talk about infrastructure. And we have to talk about infrastructure in a variety of different ways. We're really focused on investing in a more dynamic multimodal transportation system. And again, one that matches a 5-borough economy, one that maps to the new New York, not the old New York. And the other infrastructure piece we're really focused on is obviously building the next generation of broadband technologies so that people can be connected virtually throughout all neighborhoods and boroughs. So underpinning all of those key capital investments in the built environment, we're also embarking, as you know, on a huge, huge undertaking to reinvigorate and transform our city's workforce training programs. So last year, Gifford already did it. As you all know, we released actually we don't have the original report, do we, Katy? Somewhere. We released the Career Pathways Report, which really, I think, is a very bold and exciting framework for doing this massive transformation. And I think that today is going to be an opportunity to say, hold us accountable. Say, did we actually make progress? What are the challenges that we have discovered in attempting to implement this? And to have a really honest dialogue around what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, where we should make changes, and get the feedback from people who are in the field all the time. But there are some interesting numbers to show that we're actually making progress, and a lot of this is in your report. Just to name a few of the, quote, findings, as it were, over the past year. And these matter, because let's just say these things don't happen easily. There are some internal struggles and some challenges. And so Katy and the team at SBS have just been extraordinary and pushing and pushing and pushing to really make fundamental changes. So the city has doubled its investment in sector-specific skills-based training. This was a sort of talk that I gave with Katy about a year or two ago, where we found out that, the city was training people how to fix typewriters. I mean, it's just crazy. How do we actually train people to do things that people need to learn how to do in the modern economy? So we've literally doubled the amount of money that we've been putting into real skills-based training, from 28 million to 48 to 49 million. And those are real dollars, and those are real impact on people's lives. We've also added another $5.7 million to enable training for more entrepreneurs. Again, entrepreneurship married with technology and innovation is an extraordinary path for many folks, particularly women and immigrants. And so we have a whole series of programs that we've rolled out, including our very cool thing I love, the We NYC program, which is the first really specific set of programs that are through a gender lens in any city in America. It's really exciting work. We also made a really significant investment in bridge programming, and that's put about 1,000 low-skilled workers now on the track to actually obtain family-supporting wages. And as a result of those initiatives, and that's just in year one, that's just the battles we've started to fight, it's actually had a real impact on people's lives. So more than 18,000 New Yorkers, almost 5,000 more than, we think in fiscal years, we can't help ourselves, more than the prior fiscal year, will benefit from skills and entrepreneurship training. So those are actual human beings who, as a result of making policy decisions about how we spend our money, are going to have a much better chance to have quality jobs. We've also been supporting our college students with an increase in funding, doubled now to almost $50 million the city is putting into CUNY mostly, and that's doubled the enrollment of the CUNY ASAP program. And obviously, for those of you who know this work much better than I do, that program has an incredibly proven track record, and so we want to double down on programs that really work. We've also, I think, done a very good job of launching our industry partnerships. Obviously, the most famous one that we've talked about a lot is our Tech Talent Pipeline, but the healthcare industry partnership continues to be incredibly strong, and we're going to be putting together the final 4 industry partnerships this year. So those industry partnerships will be in retail, in food services, in construction, and in industrial. So at the end of 2016, we'll have 6 really, really, really strong industry partnerships up and running. And again, that's our opportunity to have this real-time feedback between what are the skills that employers need and how can we actually train people to do those jobs in real time, so we don't have the typewriter joke anymore. Okay, so that's what we're doing. The other thing, and this is a point that Gifford raised, and I think has been a challenge for a lot of us who have been in this field for many years, is that we're really, really making a conscious effort to link our economic development policy with our workforce development policy. Again, people have talked about this and written about it, and it's been a subject of a lot of debate. But we finally actually launched in October our Hire NYC program, and that is the largest targeted hiring program in the nation. So Hire NYC is actually going to connect our economic development incentives and programs and procurement activities to the workforce system in a very specific and concrete way. You'll be able to draw a dotted line between those two things. And again, that will make every single qualifying business or project, they must share open positions with the city and consider the city's referred and qualified candidates. And this is being rolled out now, some bumps, but it's incredibly important that we have created this direct relationship between the money that the city is spending on various economic development activities and making sure that New Yorkers have a chance to get those jobs. So with all of those initiatives, all of these things that we highlighted, all the things we're going to talk about today, we are, I think, at the beginning of what will fundamentally be an entire new approach to workforce development training and supporting the city's new and growing industries, right? We want to train workers. We also want to support businesses. These things have to work in concert with each other. And we obviously haven't done it alone. All of you guys have been critical partners with us. There's like an endless list of people. We could thank a million people. I don't want to take any more time, but it is definitely what I would call the biggest public-private partnership in the history of the world, right? These things are going to require truly everybody at the table. Institutions, academics, nonprofits, foundations, small businesses, big businesses. It really is, you know, the great poo-poo platter of New York City is going to be what it takes to get this right and to make a real difference in people's lives. So I know you have a ton of questions. I know Katy is going to be available all day, pretty much. She is here to answer all your questions. Don't come back until you've got it all figured out. Great. And obviously the rest of the team from the city. So again, I thank you all for the work you've done. I really beseech you. One thing we try to talk about a lot at City Hall is that we don't actually know everything, right? We often think we're the smartest people in the room. We often are not the smartest people in the room. This is a real opportunity for us to hear from people who are in the field. We're not scared of criticism. Bring it on. But let's also celebrate the work we've done to date. And I look forward to seeing you all here next year when we can have even more great news. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Everybody, thank you. Deputy Mayor Glenn. All right. If the panelists on the panel could come up and take your seats, I'm just going to take a minute while they're coming up here. I want to thank Katy Gaul-Stigge and Deputy Mayor Glenn for all their help in putting this event together today. Also to NYU Wagner and all of our panelists, a big thank you, and thank you all for being here. I'm Jonathan Bowles, and you know, one of the things that's been really fun at the center over the years, we've always had great researchers focusing on workforce development. I know David Fisher, who I think you all probably know, has been with CUF for a number of years and now is doing great things with the administration. David Fisher. Yeah, you can give David a round of applause too. We're proud of him. But we have two fantastic researchers right now at the center working on these issues, Tom Hilliard and Christian Gonzalez Rivera. And Christian has been doing a lot of research on career pathways. We're going to be coming out with our own report early next year. And with that, I just want to turn it over to Christian. Everybody, Christian Gonzalez Rivera.